I last left off with Susan Cain's quiet and how our education system has, since at least the 1940s and 50s, been trying to convert the American masses into extroverts. Taking a brief look at The Organization Man, which Cain references herself, author William White outlines how such efforts are aimed at creating a workforce suitable for our new, corporatized world. Writing as he was in the 1950s, White also highlights how Americans had already become less independent-minded and increasingly conformist to our large organizations and bureaucracies and their pressures. However, Cain largely ignores such commentary, only referencing such conformity when it suits her own needs. Elsewhere, she reverts to stereotypical talking points, such as how those of us in the Western world still value individualism, whereas those in the East, especially Asia, value collectivism or being a part of the group. Beyond cultural history, Cain does, on occasion, offer useful advice, but it is unfortunately too frequently encapsulated by such reductionistic ideas. As such, it also serves as an example of the downsides of self-help, pop psychology, and, dare I say it, psychology itself, even in its supposedly high-minded forms. Returning to her introduction, Cain emphasizes how the dynamics of introversion and extroversion came to the fore with Carl Jung, successor of sorts to Sigmund Freud. And, as with any psychological label, according to Cain, apparently, we can start passing these designations out like playing cards to any human figure, past or present. As Cain writes, without introverts, the world would be devoid of the theory of gravity, the theory of relativity, Yeats' The Second Coming, Chopin's Nocturnes, Proust's In Search of Lost Time, Peter Pan, Orwell's 1984 and Animal Farm, The Cat in the Hat, Charlie Brown, Schindler's List, E.T., and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Google, and Harry Potter. In a footnote, Cain emphasizes this would be Sir Isaac Newton, Albert Einstein, W.B. Yeats, Frédéric Chopin, Marcel Proust, J.M. Barrie, George Orwell, Theodore Geisel or Dr. Seuss, Charles Schulz, Steven Spielberg, Larry Page, and J.K. Rowling. This kind of approach, as we shall see, which categorizes everyone and everything as either extroverted or introverted, or as a product of either extroversion or introversion, is exactly why I can imagine many a potential reader putting Cain's book down. Even though it might offer some genuine insight into how we operate in society, it is still nevertheless insufferable. To move on, however, Cain turns to psychological research and the world of finance and investment to highlight how, in comparison to introverts, extroverts are far more reward-seeking and risk-taking. As Cain writes, introverts seem to think more carefully than extroverts. Extroverts are more likely to take a quick and dirty approach to problem-solving, trading accuracy for speed, making increasing numbers of mistakes as they go, and abandoning ship altogether when the problem seems too difficult or frustrating. Introverts think before they act, digest information thoroughly, stay on task longer, give up less easily, and work more accurately. Introverts and extroverts also direct their attention differently. If you leave them to their own devices, the introverts tend to sit around wondering about things, imagining things, recalling events from their past, and making plans for the future. The extroverts are more likely to focus on what's happening around them. It's as if extroverts are seeing what is, while their introverted peers are asking what if. In sum then, based on the research provided, it would appear as if introverts are able to solve more complex problems at a greater rate than extroverts, but that extroverts are more efficient at less complex tasks. And this is in large part due to the fact that introverts are both more persistent and more cautious than extroverts. Extroverts are also, in their reward-sensitive state, more inclined to seek gratification and, as Cain writes, often find themselves in an emotional state we might call buzz, a rush of energized, enthusiastic feeling. This might have its benefits, Cain argues, but it also causes the extrovert to ignore clear warning signs of danger. This blindness to danger may explain why extroverts are more likely than introverts to be killed while driving, be hospitalized as a result of accident or injury, smoke, have risky sex, participate in high-risk sports, have affairs, and remarry. It also helps explain why extroverts are more prone than introverts to overconfidence. With such information in mind, information certainly interesting and worthwhile trying to evaluate outside the psychologist's laboratory, comparing it to reality. What is Cain's conclusion? She takes this information and concludes that we can blame the Great Recession and similar events in the world of finance and investment on extroverts. In the wake of the 2008 crash, a financial catastrophe caused in part by uncalculated risk-taking and blindness to threat, it became fashionable to speculate whether we'd have been better off with more women and fewer men or less testosterone on Wall Street. But maybe we should also ask what might have happened with a few more introverts at the helm and a lot less dopamine. This call to dopamine is also important, and in keeping with such oversimplification. Indeed, much of the research Cain latches onto reduces complex behavioral processes down to one of the following: the presence in the human body of this or that neurotransmitter during this or that human activity, or A, B, or C part of the brain lights up during X, Y, or Z human process. Such studies face the same problems as other psychological research. They can suffer from small sample sizes, poor reproducibility, and the like. Taking a step back to a previous section of our book, Cain looks at the broader professional world and a study about the nature of creativity by the Institute of Personality Assessment and Research at the University of California, Berkeley. In this study, researchers compared a wide range of professionals who had made major contributions to their respective fields to those who had made lesser contributions within those same fields. According to Cain, the former group, those who had made greater and more creative contributions, described themselves as independent and individualistic. As teens, many had been shy and solitary. Cain takes this last point, that they may have been shy and solitary as teens, to argue that the more creative professionals are, first and foremost, introverts, not, of course, primarily independent and individualistic, as these professionals describe themselves as adults. As such, she is clearly trying to lump too much together into the one label, introversion. While she is addressing the very real extrovert ideal, she is also guilty of trying to push her own equally extreme ideal. But there's a less obvious yet surprisingly powerful explanation for introverts' creative advantage, an explanation that everyone can learn from. Introverts prefer to work independently, and solitude can be a catalyst to innovation. Again reiterating the fact that Sir Isaac Newton must have been an introvert, because the poet William Wordsworth described him as such. Cain offers the analogy that you are much more likely to discover the impact of gravity from an apple falling on your head if you are an introvert seeking solitude rather than an extrovert who prefers being social. If this is true, if solitude is an important key to creativity, then we might all want to develop a taste for it. We'd want to teach our kids to work independently. We'd want to give employees plenty of privacy and autonomy. Yet increasingly, we do just the opposite. Here, as it suits her point, she talks about conformity in America, moving from the mid-20th century to the late 20th century in what she labels the new groupthink, focusing especially on how our schools and workplaces have and continue to overemphasize teamwork. The new groupthink is embraced by many corporations, which increasingly organize workforces into teams, a practice that gained popularity in the early 1990s. By 2000, an estimated half of all U.S. organizations use teams, and today virtually all of them do, according to the management professor Frederick Margison. A recent survey found that 91% of high-level managers believe that teams are the key to success. The consultant Stephen Harville told me that of the 30 major organizations he worked with in 2010, including JCPenney, Wells Fargo, Dell Computers, and Prudential, he couldn't think of a single one that didn't use teams. Now this is where Cain is strongest, citing the real-world practical statistics. As a reminder, in relation to the cultural change that took place in America as it increasingly became urbanized and corporatized, and less characterized by towns and farms, she highlighted the following massive shift throughout the years. In 1790, only 3% of Americans lived in cities. In 1840, only 8% did. By 1920, more than a third of the country were urbanites. And in relation to this new groupthink, she also highlights how such urbanized and corporatized Americans have increasingly lost their workspace and privacy at the office. Today's employees inhabit open office plans, in which no one has a room of his or her own. The only walls are the ones holding up the building, and senior executives operate from the center of the boundaryless floor along with everyone else. In fact, over 70% of today's employees work in an open plan. Companies using them include Procter & Gamble, Ernst & Young, GlaxoSmithKline, Alcoa, and H.J. Heinz. The amount of space per employee shrank from 500 square feet in the 1970s to 200 square feet in 2010, according to Peter Miskovich, a managing director at the real estate brokerage firm Jones Lang LaSalle. There has been a shift from I to WeWork, Steelcase CEO James Hackett told Fast Company magazine in 2005. Employees used to work alone in I settings. Today, working in teams and groups is highly valued. We are designing products to facilitate that. Taking a step back from the work environment to the world of education, Cain discusses how this new groupthink has taken over the schools as well, with cooperative or small group learning. according to a 2002 nationwide survey of more than 1,200 4th and 8th grade teachers. 55% of 4th grade teachers prefer cooperative learning, compared to only 26% who favor teacher-directed formats. Only 35% of 4th grade and 29% of 8th grade teachers spend more than half their classroom time on traditional instruction, while 42% of 4th grade and 41% of 8th grade teachers spend at least a quarter of class time on group work. Among younger teachers, small group learning is even more popular, suggesting that the trend will continue for some time to come. This style of teaching reflects the business community, one 5th grade teacher in a Manhattan public school told me, where people's respect for others is based on their verbal abilities, not their originality or insight. You have to be someone who speaks well and calls attention to yourself. It's an elitism based on something other than merit. Again, however, Cain moves on, seeming to miss the entire point. It is not just about extroversion versus introversion. It is about the fact that Americans are constantly being pushed to conform to whatever our corporate world wants to sell us. And to reiterate, echoing points from the introduction to William White's The Organization Man, we might not even have such extreme dynamics with this extroversion versus introversion if we had not been perfectly happy and willing to comply with our large organizations and bureaucratic systems all the way back in the 20th century. But I will leave it off there for now, picking back up with the impact of open floor plans on both workers and productivity. I hope to see you there.